Good morning, everyone. I see some of our students are still coming in, and welcome to the Sower Seed Program 2025. Woo! This is our first Sower Seeds program since 2018. Is that the first? Since Morgan Carrillo, who's on our alumni board, was our last Sower Seed speaker. There she is. And you know, between then and now, we had a little pandemic, and we had a few other things that interrupted the sequence. I'm so pleased to welcome one of our bright, shining stars of our Alumni Association, Taylor Smith, class of 2013. She is fantastic, and you're going to hear from her in a few minutes. And our wonderful student, Belkey Lemos Alvarado, will be introducing her in a few minutes. Give Belkey a cheer also, yes. I'm very pleased to welcome Jay Dunn, who is the son of Kelly Snyder Dunn, class of 64, who created the Sower Seed Lecture Program in 2005. And we've had, I think, about 15 speakers since then. The program was created by Kelly in order to lift up the idea of working for social justice, to inspire our students to consider careers in social justice, or even to volunteer as part of their life's work. And of course, social justice is integral to our mission at Trinity, and it's integral to the mission of the Sisters of Notre Dame de Namur. I'm so pleased to see you, Sister Mary Hayes, here today, carrying the flag, along with Sister Ann Howard, our campus minister, carrying the flag for the Sisters of Notre Dame. I believe that our benefactor, Kelly Snyder Dunn, is watching us on live stream. So if you're watching, Kelly, hello, we're happy to have you watching us, and I hope you will enjoy the program. Now, in order to start the program, Kelly thought it was a good idea, and I certainly agree, that we reflect for a minute on the gospel parable of the sower seed. What does it mean? And so Sister Ann Howard, our Director of Campus Ministry, will read the sower seed parable.
Thank you, President McGuire, and welcome everybody. The parable of the sower, Mark 4. Again he began to teach beside the sea. Such a very large crowd gathered around him that he got into a boat on the sea and sat there, while the whole crowd was beside the sea on the land. He began to teach them many things in parables. And in his teaching he said to them, "Listen, a sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seed fell on the earth on the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Other seed fell on rocky ground where it did not have much soil, and it sprang up quickly since it had no depth of soil. And when the sun rose, it was scorched, and since it had no root, it withered away. Another seed fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it, and it yielded no grain. Other seed fell onto good soil and brought forth grain, growing up and increasing and yielding 30 and 60 and 100-fold. And he said, "Let anyone with ears to hear listen." The word of our God.
With anyone with ears, listen, and that's why we're here today, to listen. Thank you, Sister Ann. In order to introduce our speaker today, I am so pleased to introduce Belkey Lemos Alvarado, our wonderful student. Belkey.
Good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce Taylor Smith. Taylor is a graduate of Trinity Washington University with a bachelor's in international affairs and is currently team coordinator on the Rockefeller Foundation Power and Climate Team in New York City, where she plays a key role in supporting the institution and key stakeholders. With substantial experience in international development and philanthropy, Taylor is dedicated to initiatives that improve outcomes for both people and the planet. She worked with leading organizations like Nexus Global, the Sustainable Development Solutions Network, and the United Nations, where she helped empower philanthropists, investors, and social entrepreneurs to drive change, foster economic development. Taylor holds a master's in environmental law and policy from Vermont Law School, and is currently based in Stamford, Connecticut. Please join me in welcoming Taylor.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be back here. Thank you to President McGuire, to Ashley, to the Dunn family, and everyone else who was a part of bringing me here today. It feels really nice to be back here. I just feel immediately nostalgic when I walk through these halls. Like, it's just heartwarming, and to see all of you here really just is special for me, so thank you all. I'm a 2013 graduate, as she was saying, of the Blue class. Any Blue class in here? Nice, all right. So I was an international affairs major. Now I understand it's called global affairs. When I started my journey here, I had relocated from a very small town in Maine. I was like a small town girl to the core. And I was really seeking to expand my worldview and broaden my access to opportunity and find the quickest way out of there. And so that's what brought me to Trinity. My worldview didn't just expand from my classes, my internships, but from the people that I met and the friends that I made, and exposure to the wisdom of so many women who came before me. That's one thing that completely changed me, was really learning about, appreciating, and celebrating all of the women who paved the way for all of us, and suddenly feeling initiated into this legacy of phenomenal women, and into a legacy of wanting to make a difference, and being a bit scrappy and tenacious in how you figure it all out. And I really loved that. So in that vein, I want to share with you a bit about my journey, from what I became passionate about while I was in school here, to what I've been doing since, and entering the world of philanthropy, and how we're looking to meet the moment right now. So while I was attending Trinity, I became increasingly passionate about international development, and at the same time, really began opening my eyes to the global threat of climate change. I was learning how it would impact already vulnerable communities, exacerbate resource conflicts, and put strains on local and national governments. At the same time, I was also considering how economic development shouldn't slow down for developing countries just because we need to cut carbon emissions. Another way of saying that is contemplating, what does the pursuit of sustainable development and inclusive growth look like? The act of decoupling growth from carbon emissions. How do we ensure that development and environmental sustainability can coexist and even reinforce one another? This became what I saw as a sector brimming with potential and opportunity. And it also needed strong advocates and financing. Back then, I was a bit worried, though. What if I'm not able to find a job in this sector? It feels kind of niche. How do I pursue this while remaining a staunch advocate of locally led development? Well, now I'm a big believer in the saying that if it's your true calling, it will keep calling you. After Trinity, I attended grad school, and I thought I would focus more on U.S. energy policy. I wanted to see the U.S. really reduce our carbon emissions. But I quickly got pulled into the international development sphere. I had an opportunity to join a research team focused on the implications of energy poverty throughout the world. Our first project was a research study on energy access in Tanzania, and I got to work under the guidance of an incredible scholar named Dr. Benjamin Sower, whom I learned a lot from. This was the first time that I was able to see firsthand how development projects could totally miss the mark from what communities needed. I interviewed community members of the Ngorongoro district in Tanzania, and I learned that they didn't want solar mini-grids. It's not that they didn't see the utility of a solar mini-grid, but it just didn't make sense for their community. They were rural, nomadic farmers and pastoralists, and they were too transient to stay connected to one grid, one place, relying on electricity from one single source. Now, mind you, we're talking about a country that had about a 40% electrification rate at the time. This was in 2014. So there were vast swaths of land that had no access to electricity. So it's not like you could walk a couple miles and charge your phone or something. The solution ended up being to offer mobile biogas systems, a technology that a local developer had come up with. So that's kind of the professional way of saying you can make energy from shit. And other organic materials. So a mobile biogas system is a smaller portable version of a biogas plant that can be moved around easily. It has a digester that converts organic waste into biogas that can be used for cooking over the stove and lighting, and it burns clean. It offers a lot of co-benefits for living in rural areas, such as producing a valuable fertilizer. So the co-benefits made sense for these farmers, and we began making the case that these systems were ripe for scaling. Now, don't get me wrong, there are still so many use cases for solar mini-grids, but the Ngorongoro district, which was the area where we were tasked with studying and collecting real-time data and proof points for, we said mobile biogas is a good solution. So at this early time in my career, I really began to learn that there's not a one-size-fits-all solution. You can certainly take solutions and recommend how they be replicated in other regions, but a people-centered approach to international aid must be rooted in understanding and respecting the needs and aspirations of the communities that it aims to serve. So after finishing this research and graduating in 2014,
Another one.
thank you. So, I landed an internship at the UN, and I was thrilled to be front and center as countries negotiated the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Have any of you heard of it? Yes, it was adopted in 2015. So I was thrilled to be down in the chamber of the General Assembly taking notes. If you fast forward to today, I would never be that excited about note-taking ever again. But at the time, I felt like I was there transcribing history, and it was really exciting. After that internship ended, it certainly wasn't all smooth sailing from there. Trying to find my first entry-level position was a marathon and not a sprint. Truly, I don't always share this, but I worked for about 9 months as a hostess at a restaurant before I could land my first big girl job. I tell you this not to scare you, but simply to keep it real. Oftentimes in the job search process, especially when you're first graduating and starting out, it might take a little bit longer than you were anticipating. You start getting these annoying questions that seem to come every day from family and friends. Did you find a job yet? And then you start to feel this sense of concern from your family, like, sheesh, why did we invest all this money in our education if this is what we were going to get? In that span of time, all of the emotions are felt. But you can't give up on yourself. Even if it means you have to give yourself a pep talk every single morning, you always have to keep betting on yourself. I'd be lying if I said there weren't moments of discouragement, but rejection is always redirection. Remember how I said if it's your true calling, it will keep calling you? Well, one day, out of the blue, I received a phone call from my former internship director at the UN, and he asked me if I wanted to come back and work for him in a new consultancy role that they were opening to manage a grant program called Powering the Future We Want, promoting energy access in developing countries. Of course, I lit up. Before I even knew the details, I said yes. This was back before I had any clue about how to negotiate a contract or even really what the terms meant. I just knew that this was my stepping stone and I was going to make the most of it. There was no looking back at that point. So it's been 10 years since then, and I've worked on some incredible initiatives, gained some amazing mentors, and learned a great deal. So I want to give you a little bit more background into the work that we are focused on at my team at the Rockefeller Foundation, particularly a framing of what we are doing and why. So, the Rockefeller Foundation was established in 1913 by the John D. Rockefeller, a prominent industrialist and co-founder of the Standard Oil Company. His business practices and monopolistic control of the oil industry marked him as one of the wealthiest men in the world for his time. And the foundation was created as a means of channeling some of his wealth into philanthropy. Originally, the Rockefeller Foundation focused on public health, education, and science, reflecting his belief in the power of philanthropy to improve societal conditions and reduce human suffering. However, as awareness of climate change began to grow, the foundation began to grapple with the implications of its origins tied to fossil fuels. In recent years, the foundation has made significant shifts towards supporting climate philanthropy. This includes divesting our endowment from fossil fuels. We were one of the first foundations to do that, and investing in renewable energy and sustainable development initiatives, reflecting a commitment to rectify past legacies related to environmental harm. It's really fascinating to be a part of this evolution, and I think it shows how institutions can adapt and redefine their missions in response to contemporary challenges. The climate crisis is here right now, and business as usual is failing to address it. At the same time, half of the world's population continues to live in energy poverty. That's approximately 3.8 million people are still considered energy poor, according to a measurement called the Modern Energy Minimum. So if we break that down a little bit more, there are 750 million people without any access to electricity, and there's 1.6 billion people who lack access that is both reliable and affordable. So if emerging economies use traditional fuels to rise out of energy poverty by 2050, which is largely the goal, then these countries could generate 75% of all global emissions. Because the US, other Western nations, we're aiming to reduce our carbon emissions. So to address this, my colleagues incubated the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet. It's backed by the IKEA Foundation and Bezos Earth Fund, and they were both anchor donors along with our foundation. It's a collective movement working to unlock green energy access across Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Caribbean, with the aim of averting 4 gigatons of carbon emissions, expanding energy access for 1 billion people, and powering 150 million new jobs and sustainable livelihoods. There are so many benefits to electricity that we take for granted here in the US. Reliable electricity allows people to study, work, cook in the evenings, increasing productivity. Utilizing clean energy instead of kerosene or charcoal for cooking reduces health risks and enhances indoor air quality, driving healthier living conditions. Stable electricity helps small businesses operate efficiently, extend working hours, and grow their sales. It powers medical equipment, lighting, and cold chains for things like vaccines, improving patient care and outcomes. The list of benefits goes on and on. But the reality is apparent. Traditional aid models struggle to meet the escalating needs, and funding gaps are only widening. With the recent cuts to US aid, that's about a $40 billion gap. It's obvious that no single institution can fill this gap alone. It's going to require new and bold initiatives, partnerships, and philanthropy should absolutely step up in the ways that it can. Our mission remains steadfastly the same. We continue with collaboration, an intense cadence of joint planning, deep sharing of information across our institutions, and especially institutions that don't always naturally work together. One of my colleagues likes to say that philanthropy can be the grease to help move existing plans and projects forward more quickly with relatively small amounts of money. That's exactly what our partnership with the World Bank and the African Development Bank seeks to do with Mission 300. Mission 300 is an initiative where institutions have made a commitment to electrify 300 million people in Africa by 2030. but they require assistance to accelerate their progress. While scale is important, speed is even more so, because we're talking only 5 years here and 300 million people gaining access to electricity. So we launched the Mission 300 Accelerator to demonstrate how philanthropy can break through bureaucratic obstacles and jumpstart these energy projects a lot faster. We also mobilized a technical assistance task force to move forward a batch of about 20 projects. We still need much more of this, though, as we continue moving from planning to delivery. So by providing initial funding and proof of concept, philanthropies help create an enabling environment that encourages larger scale investments. This usually is the first role allotted to philanthropy, to be a first loss investor in a blended finance instrument. So risk-taking in a capital stack is critical, but risks must also be absorbed in other ways too. We have to share reputational risk as we stand together and declare these really bold ambitions, with the world watching to see if we can really deliver on it. We have to absorb partnership risk, because working together can be a lot harder than going at it alone. In this case with philanthropy, you're working across so many multilateral and governmental institutions, and sometimes there can frankly just be a lot of bureaucracy and red tape that you have to deal with. And we also have to absorb first mover risk, where we are willing to place early bets, even if we don't have full conviction and consensus on the exact right next move. However, what remains abundantly clear is that we have to move beyond incremental adjustments and adopt transformative funding mechanisms that empower local leadership and foster long-term resilience. This isn't about temporary fixes, it's about investing in sustainable ecosystems that drive lasting change. Despite the constant deluge of disappointing news that we've had lately, momentum in this area is still building globally. The energy transition is happening, and one administration is certainly not going to change that. Renewable energy technologies are more accessible and affordable than ever before. Despite the uncertainty in navigating a constantly changing environment, the global community must maintain a spirit of collaboration and continue its efforts with an even greater sense of urgency and determination. I'd like to pause for a second so we can pull up a quick little video. I was supposed to cue Timothy. And this is just 3 minutes to show you a little bit more about the Global Energy Alliance and kind of give you some visuals of what the projects are looking like. Yeah, so that illustrates a little bit more what we're up to. Timothy, if we could show the alliance of partners that are involved too. So it's really not just us powering all of this, but we have a great group at the end of the video, the other alliance partners, so you can see who else. It's quite a long list, so I won't list them all. But we're starting to see really strong signals. As we all know, these energy projects are not cheap. At a time when 20 countries in Africa face debt crises and international funding is diminishing, big investments have become harder. Early estimates suggest that connecting 300 million people to electricity will require $40 billion in public funding and even more in private finance. The only way that African countries can consider these projects is with massive amounts of concessional capital. Thankfully, at the African Energy Summit in Dar es Salaam in January, partners pledged more than $50 billion in support of increasing energy access across Africa. This is an unprecedented amount of finance that is finally being mobilized for this effort. Over 40 leaders agreed to a declaration prioritizing energy access. The first 12 countries committed to specific terms and reforms and investments that are called National Energy Compacts. And dozens of countries and companies have met and engaged in discussions around these emerging projects. The countries are Chad, Cote d'Ivoire, Democratic Republic of Congo, Liberia, Madagascar, Malawi, Mauritania, Niger, Nigeria, Senegal, Tanzania, and Zambia. They committed to detailed blueprints that would enact reforms and achieve specific energy access targets, rooted in data, informed by geospatial mapping, and endorsed at their highest levels of government. And this summer, we're going to see another batch of countries make these same commitments. So there's great momentum building in the area, and you wouldn't necessarily know it by listening to American news outlets. It's not misreporting exactly, it's just generally a lack of much coverage at all. And so I wanted to briefly talk about a few things I've learned since working in this sector. And the first is that we have benefited tremendously from having a diverse set of skills and backgrounds. I think when I was first starting out, I thought I needed more expertise in energy infrastructure and planning. I mean, you saw how technical some of those projects could be, and that was just not me at all. And so it turns out that that was a really narrow way of thinking. The variety of jobs available are beyond just energy. You can come at this work from so many angles. What do we need? We need communicators and storytellers and people who can amplify a powerful message. We need data analysts and people who can monitor impact while also evaluating our shortcomings and holding us accountable. We also need policy wonks who can help work alongside African governments to structure regulatory frameworks that establish clear, supportive regulations. We need legal expertise for structuring grant contracts and ensuring charitable purposes. We need finance experts who know how to leverage investments and develop incentives. We need gender experts who can help to ensure that reliable electricity benefits women and entrepreneurs, as well as supporting women who want to enter the clean energy sector. The list goes on. Everybody plays their role, and when they do, collectively, we all make progress together. We all lean on each other at different moments to find answers that we need. And really, the recipe for success, in my opinion, is curiosity, having a can-do attitude, and the ability to problem solve and learn how to navigate in very ambiguous environments. So as you approach graduation, I know many of you are navigating a challenging landscape, both in terms of your career choice and the current political climate. It's natural to feel apprehensive about entering into fields of public service or social justice, a field that seems uncertain at this time. I understand that the headlines can be discouraging. We've witnessed thousands of layoffs, public debates on the effectiveness of government programs, and a general sense of disillusionment regarding public service. It might be tempting to shy away from a career where there seems to be so much turmoil. But I want to emphasize that your public service is not just desirable, it's essential. I would also add that from what I've witnessed over the years, careers in the private sector can be just as uncertain and volatile. And so if we're all out here feeling uncertain anyway, you might as well feel it while you're doing something that you're passionate about. Now more than ever, we need passionate, dedicated individuals joining into the public service sphere. Our communities face pressing challenges: climate change, social inequality, public health crises, education disparities, just to name a few. These issues require thoughtful leadership, innovative solutions, and unwavering commitment to the common good. You have the power to make an impact, and your unique perspectives can drive change. I know that Trinity is arming you with not only the critical thinking skills, but also the empathy to stand by your convictions. Public service is about more than just government jobs. It's about making a difference, whether it's working in local government, nonprofits, educational organizations, or international agencies. There's a vast landscape of opportunities where you can contribute meaningfully. Your efforts can help create sustainable policies, advocate for those who need a voice, and build more inclusive communities. With a special emphasis on community, because the most sustainable change is rooted in locally led solutions. You might have heard before that those who are closest to the problem are also closest to the solution, and that's a principle that I will always stand by. So I encourage each of you not to be discouraged by the challenges, but rather to see them as an invitation to engage, a call to lean in instead of shy away. Public service needs your talent, your energy, your determination. Having a chance to align your career with your values is genuinely transformative. It will stretch you and expand you in ways that you couldn't imagine. And by connecting with others who share your passion for service, in whatever form that takes, you'll find your support system of like-minded people. They're there waiting for you. Your career, I would say, is always going to benefit the most from the people that you align yourself with and how you are able to both give and receive support. So as you prepare to embark on your own journeys, I invite you to consider what seeds you will plant, not just for your own growth, but for the flourishing of your communities and the world around you. Each of you holds a unique seed of potential waiting to take root. But remember that these seeds require tending. They need nurturing, sunlight, and the right conditions to blossom. I would like to compare public service to a garden. At times, it can definitely feel overwhelming. There's a vast expanse of challenges to be addressed. Those are like the weeds that threaten to overtake the beauty of your work. But it's also brimming with possibility. With every effort that you make, you're breaking ground, cultivating fertile soil for new ideas, vital connections, and sustainable solutions. Just as a gardener should be patient, understanding that growth takes time. You're definitely going to face obstacles. There may be seasons of drought where your efforts seem to yield very little. Remember that growth is often hidden beneath the surface, nurtured by your commitment and your passion. In public service, sometimes the fruits of our labor may not be immediately visible. Yet these very seeds that we plant today can grow into strong trees that provide shade and sustenance for future generations. You have that power to shape the landscape of tomorrow. So as you stand at the threshold of your futures, I want you to ask yourselves, what kind of garden do you want to cultivate? Will you plant seeds of compassion, resilience, and innovation? Will you water them with your commitment to service, ensuring that they thrive and blossom into a brighter tomorrow? You all have the potential to be a steward of change. I hope that you will roll up your sleeves and dig into the dirt, cultivating a thriving garden full of possibilities for you. Together, we'll nurture a sustainable future that's rooted in community and driven by purpose. I want to say thank you to Trinity for being the fertile ground from which we all grow, and thank you all. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I would love to take some questions if you have any from what it was like when I was going to Trinity, after school. Sure, you're here.
Shout it out.
So I've heard that like it's really competitive to get an internship at the UN. The fact that you got one out of Trinity is really impressive. Can you tell us something more, like a little bit more about how that journey was for you?
Sure. Yeah, the one thing that's great about the UN is there's a high volume of internships, so you can always kind of be looking at what's out there. There's a portal called UN Inspira, which will log you into the world of opportunities for the UN. So while I was doing the research on energy poverty in Tanzania, that's when I started looking at internships. And I found out on my first day, actually, that the reason I had got the internship was through a connection that I didn't even know had existed. I mentioned that scholar that I was working with on the research. He was a prolific writer, and I found out that he had done some consulting work for the UN previously. And so when they saw on my resume that I had published with him, they thought, okay, she must, be able to, she can hang. And so that is why they ended up inviting me. And so I hadn't even tried to, name drop him, but I found out afterwards that was there. And so I think it speaks to the power of connection. And however, though, I do want to say also I've been able to get opportunities without networking as well. You could say the cold applications, right? I've just been really passionate about these applications when I'm submitting, and I think it's really about, sometimes it can be a numbers game too. I think at that time I probably put out between like 50 or 60 internship applications, and so that was the one I would landed. Any more questions? Maybe about philanthropy, or yes, Dr. Pyland.
So Taylor, you just mentioned something that I think our students will maybe want to just repeat. It might have been missed. You said I had 150 internship applications. I know about your passion and your motivation, and so could you just talk to students about kind of boots on the ground hustle that people are out there, but it's possible if you.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, the job application process is the most humbling experience of your life, and I don't think anyone can argue that, especially when you're first starting out. I had my brother who just finished graduating college, and we'd be on the phone every day, like, you can do this, Todd. I mean, I felt like I was in a basketball movie or something, just rooting him on every day. You can't take it personally. You never know why you're the one who isn't chosen. Sometimes they already have someone lined up for the role. And so don't ever take it personally. You will land something, but you have to stick with it. You have to be persistent. Make sure you're putting your best foot forward. Don't send out generic cover letters. Customize them. Really speak to the role and why you are passionate about it. And just remember, it's absolutely a marathon, not a sprint. But you will land something eventually. You just got to stick with it. I think I had sort of underestimated how much I really, it grew me a lot. I put in, just as much effort into the job application process as I did into graduating, really. And so you do have to take it that seriously. Your work is not done when you get that diploma. But it makes victory that much sweeter. Those phone calls that you get to make to your friends and your family are so special. And so really just cast a wide net. There's so many job listservs and portals, and you can really find a lot of resources out there for jobs. You really just have to bring out your magnifying glass and look closely and let people know what you're interested in too. Don't be shy. Not everyone might be able to help you, but the more people that know that you have this interest, they really will get back to you. Like years later, I've had people maybe message me on LinkedIn saying, hey, we have this opportunity. And that's because she just remembered from a conference 3 or 4 years ago where I had met her. And I try to do the same for other people. That's another thing. Remember that it's a two-way street, right? So don't always just be the one that's looking for assistance, but think of ways how you can offer it to someone else. So if I see a job that I think someone else might like, I'll shoot them a quick message and say, hey, you look like a great fit for this. But you want to keep those relationships open. And it doesn't have to be anything too formal, just something quick, like thought of you. But it makes it a lot easier when you do want to reach out to that person in the future with an ask, knowing that you have, a rooted, strong relationship with them already. Yeah. So what kind of industries are some of you all interested in going to? I'm curious to hear. Like, are there any global affairs majors here? I saw there was like something like a Model UN going on. Are any of you involved in that?
Model OAS.
Okay, great. And some of you came to the conference on the status of women. Was that like in the fall in New York? Did you go to that? Next time they're there, I want someone to let me know so I can come say hi to you all. And you had a question right here, yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciated how you talked about like community-based solutions, and how you try to understand the community and also how you use that bring up solutions.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my question is about how do you get other communities that I know you consider countries that are involved, especially that are involved with the projects and issues of work. So how do you get other countries like South Sudan or Ethiopia that are doing get involved?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Some of the countries that have the biggest,
Yeah. Thank you for that question. What I've learned in some of these contexts is when we're trying to establish what is the regulatory environment, because you need regulation to build new infrastructure, right? Or to scale some of these mini grids. In some of those contexts, there isn't much of a regulatory framework to begin with. So we'll start with building that. And there absolutely can be constrained environments. We have a group that's working on we call it solar repurposing. So that can reduce the cost of bringing solar in. So you might have solar panels from Germany that still have 5 or 6 years of lifespan left to them. And so we would bring them into these contexts and use them, get another 5 or 6 years. And so solar repurposing actually has been a project that we've scaled quite a bit. And I think really there's got to be sort of a community that is able to work with us. The one thing that I've noticed is there might be appetite from developers to go into a community and build a mini grid, but you really need to think, one, about ability to pay for that electricity, right? You're not trying to burden people by needing to, is there infrastructure for businesses and entrepreneurs and the actual ability to afford the electricity that you're bringing in? So another factor to consider is, how can you build entrepreneurial skills? How can you support women and small business owners so that this electricity can help them grow their businesses? That's just as important as the electricity itself, is building that infrastructure to have a thriving economy in those areas too. I hope that helps to answer your question. Yeah, over here.
With a lot of NGOs that work locally in African countries, that benefit a lot from USAID. How do you see your work being impacted by all the funding, all this international?
Yeah, definitely. This is a conversation we've been having. Like I mentioned, it's about a $40 billion gap now, which is daunting, and we know that us alone or one or two philanthropies are not going to be able to fill such a huge gap. But I think we can step up. For us, we're staying on target with our mission, to scale electricity access and work with the same partners that we have. So World Bank, African Development Bank, IKEA, Bezos are some of our sort of core partners, and many others too. I think that for philanthropy, you know, we have been making sure that we stay aware that we are under a higher level of scrutiny at this time too, right? Like some endowments and even universities might be seen as elitist or out of touch, and so we're trying to be very aware sort of our messaging, but it doesn't change our mission whatsoever. If anything, we're also becoming more aware of, you know, potential attacks on what is a charitability purpose. So when you're like a 501c funder, like we are, there's certain purposes that you can give for charity. Healthcare, education, ending poverty, but there's kind of this gray area around climate funding and climate philanthropy that we need to be mindful of, you know, our language and how we write about these energy projects and what is their purpose. So I hope that this landscape kind of continues to evolve in the future, and that climate philanthropy isn't under so much scrutiny, but we still have climate deniers out there. So we're definitely on guard in terms of that. And I was telling President McGuire earlier, foundations cannot lobby. However, there's one area where we can lobby, and it's around the sort of purpose and operational elements of foundations and our ability to do our work. So if that were to come under more scrutiny, there's definitely a legal team that would kind of battle it. Yeah, sure, right here.
My environmental justice class and the importance of getting input from the community and building a relationship with them so they feel comfortable giving that input and getting their voices heard. I love the example of the story of the nomadic farmers that you told at the beginning. Can you talk a little bit more about how you built that relationship with them and how you got their input? Or any other examples? I know a lot of communities, there's a long history of past distrust with governments and even nonprofits.
Yeah.
Do you have any examples of working through that, or what you did to connect with the community to build that relationship?
Yeah, I think distrust, rightfully so. I mean, there's definitely some legacies of harm throughout international aid, and the connection was made through the developer of the mobile biogas systems, being from Tanzania, and pretty convinced that his solution was the right one for this community. And so this was some research that we were doing for Energy Policy Journal. And we were connected through the biogas developer, and I was tasked with conducting some of the interviews. So I needed a translator for the interviews. And this was a little bit before we were really comfortable with Zoom. And so it was really interesting to see people who had been pastoralists for years hop on a Zoom meeting and translate this conversation. But I really started to dig deeper into, have you seen other communities using mini-grids before? Has it been good outcomes? And I had heard that in some cases you would see like abandoned mini-grids that were no longer operating because there wasn't the built-in training on the maintenance and repair of these solar mini-grids. And so they'd be like, yeah, well, we've seen broken ones that are no longer in use, and we didn't have anyone that could come back and fix it. So sometimes you can have really sort of abandoned investments there. And so that was something that I was immediately really mindful of. And I think really what I learned from that was that there was, at that point, a strong will to build mini-grids. And I think that from that research, we were really able to demonstrate that it wasn't going to be a smart investment in the Ngorongoro district. As much as I was myself an advocate for mini-grids, that wasn't the point of this research project. And so that really had opened my eyes. And I think it just starts with community-led advocacy. Sit in a circle and ask people what are their needs. Don't assume that you know. because those who are closest to the problem are also closest to the solution. You can learn who's going to be the real leaders in that community to help with training. We have train the trainer workshops where women can learn solar maintenance and really take ownership of these mini grids and take good care of them. And so that matters just as much as gaining the initial investments. Yeah. Dr. Ocampo?
Thank you. You know, seeing you is so amazing, and I feel like Trinity is one big family, and we're all, well, a body, and we're all cells in it, and whenever one of us is doing amazing things, we all feel it. So thank you so much for your amazing work. That's thing one.
Thank you.
Now I have kind of a high-risk question, which I hope will be high reward as well, and that is, you know, many times students, I had a liberal arts education, and I live and die by a liberal arts education, and a lot of times students are like, I mean, you've been in international affairs, and many times I hear from students, well, that's not related to my major, or how can that turn into a career for me? And I wonder if you could speak to the value of liberal arts in even maybe some random class that you just took because it was at a time slot that was available and you thought would never relate to anything you're going to do in the future. What is the value of kind of having that broad background to really understand all of the arts and sciences and social sciences and natural sciences and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I remember when I had first started here and with my major, I would tell some people from my hometown international affairs, and they were like, what can you do with that? I said, what? The opportunities are endless. There's so many different avenues you can take with this major. And in terms of sort of liberal arts, I remember the first class that I took that I wasn't initially sure like how it would improve my education, but I was naive, clearly. Reasoning and argumentation. I loved that class. Do they still have reasoning and argumentation? So just finding gaps in arguments and like learning all of the different strategies. What's a canary in a coal mine? Like all of these different distractions, just really learning how to argue or strategize. And that really ended up just being hugely beneficial. And then fast forward 2 years later, I ended up helping tutor for that class because I loved it so much. But yeah, I think writing is so important. You know, I do a lot of drafting talking points or memos or background notes for different leaders that we might be meeting for our president and CEO to meet. So having the ability to sort of quickly do research, understand the history, be succinct in my talking points, understand what are the key points to make. All of that comes from my liberal arts background, absolutely. And so, yeah, I think it's good to explore, you know, all different types of classes because you never know where you'll find your sort of niche interest, right? When I started here, I didn't think that I would go down the avenue of environmental justice, climate justice, but as my eyes were really opened to this global threat and that we were going to need a generation of people out here advocating and building legislation, that became really important to me. So the more that you can cast a wide net, you'll find different types of opportunities and get connected with the right people. Thanks.
Other questions, comments?
Thank you all.
I'm going to take the privilege of the final question then.
All right.
One of the reasons why Kelly Gunn created the Sower Seed series is to inspire our students to consider work in social justice careers. And you certainly reflect the idea of social justice. And I'm sitting here thinking, you know, care for God's creation is the seventh principle of Catholic social justice teaching. It's very deep. Can you just reflect a little bit on how it is that you came to such a passionate commitment to care for our environment and climate and your social justice philosophy behind that?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it can be overwhelming to think of all of the social justice issues, right? We care about, it's all interconnected, intertwined. For me, I just learned that so many other issues would be exacerbated due to climate change. You know, whatever progress we were making across education or public health could be impacted by rising temperatures, increasing prevalence of severe storms, relocation, drought. So that, to me, became sort of the umbrella issue of, okay, reducing carbon emissions, and then we can ensure that all of the progress that we're making for women and girls can be maintained. And so that's, and just seeing how these issues are interconnected. And I really learned that with climate change, I think, and being at the foundation now, I often get to talk to people that work on the agriculture teams and the health, and we look at how energy can power solar irrigation systems to grow more food or to power schools. So I got to touch on the other topics that I was also passionate about, which really intrigued me, bringing more women into field of clean energy. There's still definitely a shortage of women, so a lot of opportunity out there too, like fellowships and funding for women who are interested in clean energy. So definitely don't sleep on this sort of growing sector right now. Just the fact that it was able to touch on all of my passion areas is really what kind of kept me drawn in. And so I have friends who are still working in these other sectors, and we all get to kind of support each other. I have friends in social work or advocacy, some friends working on immigration policy, and so I kind of live vicariously through them too. Yeah.
Give it up for Taylor.
Thank you all.